Let's have you start by introducing yourself.
Okay.
And telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Phil Weybright. I've been in Marshall County now for about 50 years. I came from Elkhart County, which isn't that far away. Went to a little high school called New Paris High School, about the size of Argos. Played basketball there through my high school career. And was very successful with our teams there, and just got to love basketball. Went to Manchester College, and I played basketball there all 4 years at Manchester. And while I was there, I got a chance to interview. The superintendent of Argos schools called me and wanted to talk to me, and so I went down there and offered me a job the first day. And I thought, well, I better take it while I can, and I can always leave the next year. And I was there for 40 years, so that was the end of that. So started out as an 8th grade basketball coach. Was there 1 year, and then Gene Snyder got the head coaching job. He had been the assistant, and he wanted me to be his assistant, so I became his assistant coach for 4 years. And he was fairly successful, but he just decided that it was too much. He was from Argos, and there was a lot of internal pressure from the townspeople, and he just thought he would move on and be the athletic director, which he did. And he recommended me for the job, and I got it when I was 27 years old. So I became the head coach at Argos. Was very fortunate because we had some really talented players that came through. I was the head coach for 14 years at Argos. I left because I was having some health issues with my back, and I was one of those coaches that needed to be on the floor and demonstrating and doing things, and it was hard on my back, and I would wind up laid on the floor, and I couldn't do hardly anything. And when I was coaching, I had to stand up. I couldn't sit down, and so really that had a lot to do with me retiring from coaching. I think I probably had achieved all I could achieve at Argos, and so I just decided to give that up. I really had always, my whole plan was to be a teacher, and so that's what I went back to. I also was the golf coach at Argos, so I stayed involved. And, my children, we lived on the line between Plymouth and Argos, so my children went to school in Plymouth. And I was there in Argos, but it was only 3 miles outside of Argos, so it was a very nice community. They always treated me with utmost respect, and I have nothing but good things to say about Argos schools. So that's a little background of where I came from and what I did.
So how? So you got the job when you were 27. That's really.
I thought, at the time I didn't think I was young, but obviously I was. Now that I think back, I just had my 73rd birthday yesterday, so I've been here a long time, but I've learned a lot. I learned a lot in coaching. I thought, 4 years of JV, I knew all the answers. I soon learned that there's a big difference between junior varsity and varsity basketball. And some of the coaches were very good during that time. That was probably one of the best things that I got out of the coaching was the camaraderie with the other coaches. Jack Edison was at Plymouth, and Larry Radecki at LaVille, and Dean Foster was at Bremen. And, we all just got along really well. I mean, we were very big competitors, but we really got along well. So that was a very enjoyable part. When I decided to stop coaching, that was one of the things that I missed the most, was being around the other coaches. That was kind of a tough part, but, you move on in your life.
So how, over those years, how did your coaching philosophy develop? Like, how did you...
Well, this is a strange story. We had a basketball player. When I was the head coach, I had an offense that we had run in college, and, it was okay, but it just wasn't what I wanted. And I was more of an offensive coach than a defensive coach. So I sat down one summer, and I had a player that was 6'4", a really good physical player. Wasn't the sharpest as far as knowing what to do, and just didn't have that ability. So I developed an offense where he simply had to go right or left. It was up to him. He could go right or left, and our whole offense was determined on that. We called it the 1-4 offense, and boy, it just worked well. And then from that, we went into a continuity. And later on, when I got more players and better players, it even worked better. And so that really worked well all the years that I was there. And I've never seen anybody run the same offense since then, and there's no reason to, but it just worked well for us. Worked good because all of our players were in other sports. And so when they came time to basketball, we only had a week or two to get ready to play. So we had a very simple offense, but it's one that they learned from the time they were, freshmen on up, and so they stepped right in and was able to do that. So I had a player named Doug Snyder who was a point guard, real good point guard, but he was on the JV, and our point guard either broke his leg or I think he was out for the year, and I needed somebody, and so I brought him up because he was a good ball handler, and he just fit right in because he knew the system right there. So we basically developed an offensive system that was simple, and yet it was one that they knew so well. We ran it every night over and over again, and even when people would scout us, they knew what we were going to do, but we knew better than what they did. Plus, we had counters. If they went one way, we went the other. It was just a very simple offense. And, I got a chance when I was coaching, because of the success that we had, to take a trip overseas for the Indiana Basketball Coaches Association. And we went to, at the time it was Yugoslavia. Today, that area is called Macedonia. And went over there and did a 2-week camp. And basically talked about our offense and what we did. And so that was, pretty unique to get to do that and spread that particular offense to them. They thought it was pretty different, but they kept saying, well, that seems awfully simple. But it just worked. At least it worked really well for us.
Well, with high school players, sometimes.
Yes. Yes. Well, especially when you're involved in all other sports. Today, so many of the players are playing basketball all year round. That's just what they do. So, they can become more sophisticated, and maybe they also work on their bodies, getting stronger all the time and working out at it. And that's what's changed it. That's why in my opinion, why we had to go to class basketball, because the bigger schools everything was individualizing on one sport, and the small schools just didn't have a chance because we couldn't keep up. When we played in '79, we could participate, we could do that. But today, if we had the same team, I just don't think there's any way we would compete with the Warren Centrals or the Carmels or whatever, because they're just so physical, and our little 160-pound kids that were running soccer and doing everything else just wouldn't be able to compete with that in Indiana, because every community had their own team. Everybody supported it. There were 700 and some high schools at one time playing basketball, but every little community had their own, and so there was a lot of pride, a lot of that feeling, and that a lot of that has disappeared, and that's really sad. And I loved it, one-class basketball. I played in it when I was in high school, and we played. We had 220 people in our high school, and we played Elkhart, which at that time was one school. And, they had almost 3,000 students, and their cheer block was bigger than our high school, and it was unbelievable. We played at the Elkhart Northside Gym, and that's where our sectional was. But we loved every minute of it. We probably weren't going to win, but it was just good. My final year, we played against Elkhart in the finals and lost handily, even though we had a pretty good team. And they went on and went to the finals of the semi-state. I mean, they were just really good. But it was, we didn't feel bad about it. But times have changed. Just unfortunately.
Going into that year, what were your expectations for the team?
I really had some high expectations. Obviously, I wasn't thinking anything about where we wound up going, but we had won the sectional the year before, and only had one starter, maybe a second one started on and off, and had a lot of young kids coming up, and our JV had won the Bi-County JV tournament, and felt like we were really going to be pretty good. But things everything gelled together, and everything really went well. We had couple close games, usually with LaVille. Larry Radecki would always give us a really good battle, we barely won a couple of those games, but we were able to do so. But we had outstanding shooters and team play, and so if somebody tried to shut down one player, we had somebody else that could do the job. So 79 turned out to be probably the best team that I ever had. Maybe not the best individuals, but certainly the best team. But we had no one could take the ball away. They couldn't press us at all because we had good guards, and even our forwards and our center could even handle the ball. So we could really handle the ball well, pass it well, and we shot over 50% for the year. So we were good shooters. We usually played a zone because we weren't that big. Our starter was 6'2", was our tallest player that we had. We did have a Rich Tuttle, who was about 6'5", who came in. He was only a sophomore, but he came in and helped us. So sometimes that made a difference because he had some bulk. But most of the time we were pretty small. We did it all with quickness and good shooting. But moved the ball really well and just were very unselfish. So that was that kind of a team. We wound up winning by county just by a couple points over LaVille. And that seemed to give us a little shot in the arm, and I think we played LaVille the next week, and then we beat them by 10 or 12. So we felt like we were getting pretty good. And then each game, we just kept winning by more and more, and we just started gaining confidence. And, of course, we had to play in the Plymouth sectional, and there's always that fear that Plymouth, even though they weren't overly strong that year, there was always that fear that, that they'd come along. But we won our first game, and we got in the sectional, and we faced Plymouth. And we're playing in the Plymouth gym, and the place was packed. And it was, of course, for Argos, that's a big game because at the time Plymouth didn't play us during the season because they were too small. They had nothing to gain. So we got a chance to play them, and we just exploded right off the beginning. I think we were up like 17, 18 points at the end of the first quarter, and then it just got bigger and bigger. And I started substituting, and the Argos people were mad at me because they wanted to just trounce them, including my wife. She was very upset with me because I was too nice to them. But I knew we had to play the next night, and we had to play LaVille again. So I think we wound up winning by 19 or 20 points. But, I think we scored 90-some points, but probably could have done much better. It was just that's when I knew we're pretty good. And then we beat LaVille the next night and went to the regional, won the afternoon game pretty handily, played Elkhart Central. We had played them in the finals the year before in the regional. And they were big. They had 6'10", 6'9", 6'5" forward who was awesome, and a couple of good guards. And we just shot the ball extremely well. They tried to press us. Nothing worked for them. We got up like 15 points, and then they closed it a little bit. And I went in, but even our Mike Sheets, who was another sophomore, came in, and he had like 3 shots from the corner. It was unbelievable. So that was probably the best game we probably ever played, was at the Elkhart Northside Gym. And it was completely packed. Of course, the whole place was for us because we're playing Elkhart, which, of course, for me, that was big because they had trumped me when I was playing in high school. So that was just a big, big event for me at the Elkhart Northside Gym. So
how did you feel at the end of that game after you had the best?
Yeah, it was just awesome. It was just an unbelievable feeling that we had achieved that, and to win a regional was just unheard of. Both when I was in high school and at Argos, it was just those things just didn't happen. But it did. And so we were going to go to Fort Wayne, which I'd been going to Fort Wayne to semi-states since I was in high school. And, that was just like the place where you're going. And there was a Hilliard Gates. Hilliard Gates was the famous announcer, and he'd been doing it for years. And here I am being interviewed by Hilliard Gates. And we just were pretty awed by it, but our players just completely were focused and didn't bother them one bit. We played really well.
Why is that? Why do you think they weren't?
I'm not sure. We kept the same routine. We did everything the same. We practiced the same. They were confident they could make shots. So we played Fort Wayne Harding in the afternoon Fort Wayne Harding had a player named Jim Master, who wound up being Mr. Basketball that year and went to Kentucky and played there all 4 years. And he actually was from Plymouth and left after his, I think after his sophomore year, and transferred to Homestead, or to Harding, Fort Wayne Harding. And, you know, our kids knew him because they had played against him in junior high. Argos, we did play Plymouth in junior high. They'd play us there, just wasn't in high school. So anyway, so they felt confident because they had beaten him there because they were pretty good. So they just played really well. We won at the last second. We made a fantastic play that they tied it up in the free throw, and they came to press us, and Bill Odell winds up throwing a long pass down to Mark Malone, and he's going in for a layup. They did foul him. Jim Master fouled out with that. So even if it would have gone into overtime, I think we would have handled him. But anyway, he hit both free throws, and that was the ball game. So now we got to play the Marion Giants at night, which, you know, and we had had a tough game, so we were pretty tired. And I thought, boy, that is something. We won a game in the semi-state, we had scouted Marion somewhat, and you know, we weren't afraid of them, but I was thinking we were going to be really tired, and they were big, but we played extremely well again, shot well, did everything we were supposed to, and again, it went right down to the wire. I mean, I think it was the last 6 possessions on both teams scored. I mean, we'd score, go up 1, they'd go down and score, and they'd be up 1, we'd go up 1, and they hit a shot with about 8 seconds left to put them up 1, so it didn't look real good. We did call a timeout. We kind of set up a play that didn't necessarily work, but we got the ball into Mark Malone, who's a good guard. He got it down the floor. He put right into Bill Odell. Bill Odell got a 15-foot jump shot and missed it. And, you know, I thought, and all at once I see him foul, and he fouls his shot. He goes in, and it actually hit the rim again. And so their players were up, and they're coming down, and Bill is going up, and his little hand just goes up there and just tips it in, and just after he tipped it, and the buzzer goes off. I mean, it was pandemonium for everybody, you know. So it was just unbelievable to win it. In fact, it took a long time for it to think that, you know, we're going to the Final Four. We're going to Indianapolis, which is unheard of for a school our size, and for somebody like me who is also, you know, just nothing you ever really thought was possible. So it was a wonderful time for Argos, that's for sure.
In the game before, when Odell threw down, was that a play that you had drawn up in the past, or did they just have? What
happened was we have a drill that we would run every single day of practice, where our players would cut up and then they'd take off the other way, and we would throw the long pass. So, and plus he's a good athlete. Bill Odell was an excellent athlete, and he was a pitcher also, so he could throw it. But Mark Malone just gave him that little look, like this is the time, and he just cut up and then took off, and Bill just took it out and just threw it the full length of the court and caught him just as he was just going in. I mean, so it wasn't me that said, "No, we're going to do this." It was just we had done it so many times in practice that it just became automatic. It was just something that they did because they had done it so many times. And again, but it takes really good players. It takes players that understand the game.
Well, to think of doing that in that moment when it's such a high pressure, I mean, just it's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing to me to sit there, and I can still remember that going in and after the game, and the Fort Wayne Coliseum. You think of it as being, but the dressing room we're in was like bare walls with little hooks, you know, and so, but I was so excited, but I didn't want to. So as soon as the game was over, I kind of players were jumping around. I gave a couple quick hugs, and I got out of there. It was just too much pressure for me. I went out there and I went inside the dressing room and I thought, I can't believe we're going to the final. But, you know, it was just. Then the players came in, but it was just an unbelievable feeling to get that. And you know, we were a low class operation, so you know, we drove over there, and I drove. I'm driving my car, and I've got 4 kids in the back, you know, on the way home. And we'd had 2 tough games, and I know I had Mark Malone and Dave Calhoun, both guards. They were in the back, and both fell asleep. I mean, they were just exhausted. And we came through Bourbon was one of the places, and we came through Bourbon and the overpass, and we're driving underneath, and there's people out there waving, and they had signs up, and I mean, it was pretty amazing, really, for the whole county. And we never won the state. Plymouth did later, and Warsaw did later. But I really think we had a lot to do that because, hey, if Argos can do it. Before that, you just don't think about winning the state champion. But now, I still remember after we won the semi-state that we went back to the gym and it's like 1 or 2 in the morning and we're having this pep session thing going crazy. And I look out and Scott Skiles, who was a freshman or sophomore at the time, is there, standing there. And I just knew. And I said, you know what? He thinks he's going to be there someday. I mean, because he was a very confident young man, and I could just tell that that's what he was thinking. So it was, a wonderful time. I'll take a break here now. I'll tell you about what happened the next week. Why I don't think we played quite so well. Yeah.
So you mentioned the pep rallies and people just, how did the community react? What was the sense?
I think our community was so proud. They really were. Because they're just a small little town. Everybody else gets all the attention, and all at once we were at the top, and that was a great feeling. But it was good for them. I mean, they needed that, and we all lived off of that. But with that came an awful lot of pressure because now the whole state is. I mean, I can still remember when Milan went. I mean, that's how, and then there was some other team. But at the time, there was a big debate about whether to go to class basketball or not. That was a big argument. And all at once, here's this small school that's in the Final Four. And all the people who wanted to keep the way it was, the one class, were just, everybody was behind us because, including most of the sports writers, most of those people wanted it to stay like it was. And I understand that completely. But we got descended on with TV coverage. I mean, they came from everywhere. I mean, we had at least 3 stations from Indianapolis that were there in town. And the worst part of the whole thing was that was our spring break. So we were in the semi-state, and now we have a week off. Well, we no longer could do the things we've always done. We have practice at a certain time. You have school. You don't have time to be thinking about everything else all at once. And there's TV trucks in town, and there's people constantly wanting, interviews and things like that. We tried to keep it somewhat, but it's just impossible. We had people who went to kids' houses. They'd just ask, where does such and such live? And they would go to their houses and were interviewing kids. And, and you can't blame the news people because that's, but it was probably the worst thing that happened to us. And our kids were ready to play. I think the pressure just got to them. And they were just tight. We just didn't shoot well. Other than that, we played as hard as we did at it, and we just didn't make the shots. And I'm, one of our best shooters who just doesn't miss, Don Odell, when he was open, he would just make, and it's just off. They were bouncing around instead of going in. And so when you're small like we were and you can't make shots, you're not going to win. We only got beat by 10, but we played a really good team, an Anderson team that's plays best competition around, and didn't shoot well and still came within 10. So I felt bad for the kids because I knew they were better than what we played. That's probably one of the worst games shooting wise we had the whole year. It wasn't because the other team was so much better. It's just we just were tight. And I know that feeling because I was as tight that game as I've ever been. I hate to say this, but I actually took a tranquilizer during the week. I was just under so much pressure and tension. And when we got to Market Square Arena, which is like the palace at that time of that's the place where you go, and we're in there and we go out and we shoot and do all that, and all at once we come back in. We're going to start the game in a few minutes, and we had a nice locker room, and on the other side was the restaurant. I went in there, and all at once the tears just started running out of my eye. The tension was just coming. I felt it so strong, and So I can just imagine what the kids were feeling. And I know that was a factor. Now, I don't think it affected all of our kids, because I thought Doug Jennings and Bill Odell, who both played extremely well. But some of our others just didn't shoot as well, and and they needed to. But you know what? I have no regrets whatsoever, because it was just a wonderful experience for me. It was a wonderful experience for our town. You know, it was just it was a highlight. The only bad part of it is, what do you do for an encore? You know, what do you come back with? And we haven't talked about this, but you know, the next 2 years we were undefeated both years also. So I mean, we were pretty good. And the next year we actually got up. We were third in the state when we went into the sectional. And you know, and that was all the big school, everything. We were third in the state, hadn't lost, and played well in the sectional. And Dave Calhoun, who was one of our starters in the junior year, had torn his knee up during his senior year. And that really hurt us a lot, because we didn't have the quickness and the ability to shoot. So that hurt us, but we were still pretty good. And Doug Jennings was really coming around. Bill had graduated, Odell had graduated, but we still were pretty decent. We won our sectional, and then we went to a regional, and we got to the final game of the regional. We're playing against Warsaw, who was pretty good. They went to the Final Four, and we played them even. And again, it went down to the last, and we were down one. And Doug Jennings went for a shot. He got fouled by their best player. 5th foul. He's out of the game. So Doug Jennings just never missed free throws. Never. When it was a tight situation, in the 4 years I had him, he had never missed a free throw that I know of in a tight situation on the line. And so they called timeout, so we come over, and you know, there was just no doubt in my mind we were going to make both of them. Our only concern was there was like 2 seconds left, so we had to decide what we were going to do after we got up on. We were talking about that all the way through, and he goes out and he shoots the first one, and it just hit the edge of the rim and just went out. And you could just see his face. He couldn't believe that he missed it. So, but if he makes the second one, that's tied, and we're still in good shape. There's only 2 seconds left, and we've got their best player is fouled out, and you know, we're sitting pretty good. And he missed the second shot. It was unbelievable, and so we lose the game, and he was just totally devastated. I mean. And that's probably one of the best things I ever did in my life. Was my first reaction. I went out and just grabbed a hold of him and just gave him a big hug and told him how much we appreciate all he'd done for us. But I will guarantee you to this day, he'll never forget that. I mean, that was just a very big part, because he was really a great player. He went on and played at the University of Indianapolis with a full ride. You know, was a good player, very good player, but just why that happens, you know, it just does. And so, but we were really good. And the next year, we lose Doug Jennings, we lose a couple others, and we still have a really good team. That was the year that those guys had been sophomores when we went to the state, and they went undefeated and played really well, and we won the sectional that year. And then we did not play well in the first game of the regional for whatever reason. I don't know why, but what a run. You know, we won, and then we won a few games the next year, and so we won 76 straight games in the regular season. So, you know, you get a little spoiled, and I think that year we lost 5 games, but it was like, gosh, we're not very good, you know. So, but it was, but that particular year is a year then that Plymouth won the state tournament, and most people don't remember this, but in the sectional. And we weren't bad. We'd lost 5 games, but we weren't bad, and we still had a lot of confidence. And we were actually up by 3 or 4 points at the end of the third quarter against Plymouth in the sectional, and then had a little problem and didn't play that well in the fourth quarter and lost, but gave Plymouth about as good a game as anybody had, and they wind up winning the state. So we had quite a run. After that, things weren't as good, but you know, we had good players, nice kids, but when you get that high, it's hard to come down. And I think that, you know, it took Argos a little while. We were the cute little darlings for a while. And then after about 4 or 5 years, we weren't so cute anymore. You know, a lot of people, including Plymouth and a lot of that, getting a little sick of Argos doing that. And I understand how that works, but if you're hot, you go with it, and we, during that time, we just had some really good athletes.
So what do you think it was about that? I mean, because winning that many games in a row is, unheard of.
Yeah, it just seems like they came to play every day. And in the last 20 games or so, I just think they were not going to be the team that lost. They just weren't going to do it. That senior year of the group that was a sophomore, they just were determined that they were going to win. In that section of that year, LaVille had a nice team, and we just went out and just played as well as we possibly could have. They just felt that way. The next year, we had lost a couple players, and we really weren't that good, but we still won the first 6 or 7 games that year, just simply because I think they thought they were supposed to. And we did, but then we finally got beat, which really was kind of a relief to me, because every game you just felt like you had to win. You had to, got to keep this going, keep it going. So once it ended, it was fine, but it was just quite a run. I don't know if anybody will ever break it. If they do, good for them, but pretty tough to do.
So who are some of the, were there any players that were part of all the games of that period, like a freshman started? Or
I didn't have any freshmen on that team, but I had 2 sophomores, Mike Sheets and Rich Tuttle, and so they were there for 3 years of undefeated, all 3 undefeated seasons. So, that's pretty amazing, really. And then there was other kids in their class, and then they were there for 2 of the undefeated seasons. But those 2 were there for all of them. So, but I think this all starts. The bi-county was really important back then. I don't know. It doesn't seem quite as important now. I don't know exactly why, but it was. I mean, the place was always packed. You couldn't get a seat. You had to have your tickets, full session ticket. You had to have it. And when I was at Argos, if we could win a game, that was something. I think we went like 6 or 7 years without winning a game in the bi-county. So it was like, and all at once, to be there and to win that was unbelievable. And that was probably the first really big highlight I had in my career, was winning the bi-county that first year in '78. I still remember coming home in the bus, and our kids were just going crazy. And there was a song out at the time by Queen called "We Are the Champions." Well, I wasn't exactly a musical genius at that time, so I had no idea. I thought that somebody had found this and would push, but I didn't realize it was a big, So I'm thinking, boy, that really fits well. And then we get home and we have a pep session, and we come in and they play this song again. We are the champions. We all come in. Wow, this is really something. And then we have a pep session on Monday. We don't have school, and all at once, here we come in again. Here we are, the champions again. And I can still remember that. And I was so naive that I thought that somebody found this just for our team, And so I just saw Bohemian Rhapsody not very long ago, so now I understand a little bit more what was going on. But I was so involved with basketball for 10 or 12 years of my life. I just, music, other things, it took a back seat. That's the nice part about getting out of coaching as early as I did. I was in my 40s, and all at once I found out there were other things in the world. And I've enjoyed it. I would never give up any of that basketball, but I'm glad that I retired when I did, because I got to experience a lot of different things. So, it all evens out. Basketball consumes an awful lot of time. If you're really serious about it, and I was. So that was my life for a while, but I did move on from that. So I don't think basketball is quite as important today, maybe at least to the communities. I think that, the students and so on. But back then, everybody went to the games. That's what you did. That was the social life. And I don't think it's that way today.
Not quite as much, So did that love for basketball, did that start when you were young?
Oh, it started when I was really young. My dad used to go play like church basketball or something, and I just always went with my dad. And so I'd go along and I'd be shooting on the sideline, and my dad put up a basket in the barn. We had a barn, and so I would be out there every night shooting, and of course I was always the star, and I had my little games I was going to play, and I'd make the winning shot and all that. But basketball was my life, and I had a lot of success when I was in high school. I was the leading scorer at New Paris High School. Of course, they closed the high school right after I graduated, so then I kept the record. See, that was, I had a lot of success. Thought at Manchester, I thought, well, I'll go to a small school. I won't have a problem. Well, I found out there's some pretty good players in college, and I played a lot, but I learned a lot. I learned more there than I did in high school. In high school, I was kind of the go-to guy, and that's. You need to learn more about team basketball, and I got a chance to do that at Manchester, and so that was really good for me.
Who was your coach?
His name was Claude Wolf, and we had some really good times. We actually, in my senior year, we had a player on our team named Dick Harris, who was the leading scorer in Indiana college basketball for many years, and he had tryout with the Cincinnati Royals. He was a really good player, and my senior year, we went to South America and played basketball. We did exhibitions around 3 different countries and got to go to Machu Picchu before it was cool to go to Machu Picchu. I mean, we were going up there and there was nobody else there. And it was, we went to Peru and Bolivia and Ecuador and traveled around and did that. So, basketball's been pretty good to me. And I got the chance to go to Yugoslavia as a coach. And so, basketball's been pretty good to me. And it's not my whole life, but it certainly has brought a lot of life experiences to me.
How did your wife feel about your basketball obsession?
Well, she was from Argos, and so she was very happy for us to have the success that we did, and kind of got caught up into it. I thought she would be really happy when I retired. But she really wasn't so. I mean, we had gone through it so much that she had just got used to a certain lifestyle, and I think that she kind of missed, going to some of the games and having me do that. So, but she was pretty understanding. When I went to the trip to Yugoslavia, I just had 2 young children at the time. I had a son who was like probably 4 or 5, and my daughter was like 2, and I've gone on a lot of different trips, and I've never gotten homesick in my life. I never have. But boy, that was awful to leave your children behind, and boy, I couldn't wait to get home. So I learned something from that there is more important things in basketball, and that was a good learning experience. But I've loved basketball, still do. I still watch it a lot. I don't go to a lot of high school games. I go to some, but I've become a Purdue fan. Both my kids went to school at Purdue, so I go usually a couple games and go there. And my son was there when Drew Brees was there, so we went to all the football games, and that was a good time. So, both my kids graduated from Plymouth, so I live in Plymouth now, so good life.
Yeah, it sounds like basketball has been good to you.